Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines of the hour. Ukraine and the United States hold high-level talks in Miami today, according to a Kyiv envoy. President Zelensky warns Russia is preparing new massive strikes across Ukraine. The White House announces a US-led board of peace to oversee temporary governance in Gaza as deadly violence continues despite a fragile ceasefire. The board includes Marco Rubio, Steve Witkoff, Tony Blair and Jared Kushner, with President Trump serving as chair. A Palestinian committee is to oversee post-war governance in Gaza, and they have officially started operations in Cairo. The move comes as international efforts continue to shape Gaza's future after the conflict. Reza Pahlavi calls on the world to help oust Iran's Islamic Republic and target Revolutionary Guard leaders. Human rights groups say over 2,600 protests are killed as Tehran labels the unrest foreign-backed riots. Syria's President Ahmed al-Shara formally recognizes Kurdish language rights and restores citizenship to all Kurdish Syrians. The decree follows deadly Aleppo clashes that killed 23 and displace over 150,000. Ugandan opposition leader Bobi Wine is forcibly taken from his home by the military to an unknown location after a tense election. Authorities remain silent as the internet blackout continues and rights groups raise concerns. President Trump says he may impose heavy tariffs on countries that oppose his plan to annex Greenland, a self-governing territory of Denmark. He does not name targets or legal authority as Denmark, Greenland, and US lawmakers reject the proposal. The US Justice Department investigates Governor Tim Walz and Mayor Jacob Frey over alleged obstruction of ICE operations. The probe follows the fatal shooting of Renee Good by an ICE agent, which triggers protests in Minneapolis. Those are the headlines this hour, and we start this bulletin with news from the United States. And the Justice Department is investigating Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey over accusations they obstructed federal immigration enforcement. This follows protests sparked by the killing of Renee Good by an ICE agent. Walz and Frey have both condemned the investigation, calling it politically motivated. The probe examines whether their actions interfered with federal officers doing their jobs. Protests in Minneapolis continue as local leaders accuse ICE of reckless tactics. Meanwhile, President Trump has stated there's no immediate need to invoke the Insurrection Act, despite earlier threats. Trump clarified that while the law remains an option, he sees no reason to deploy it right now. Joining us now is Matthew Vadum. He is an American journalist and author. He joins us live from Washington, D.C. What is the weight behind this federal investigation, Matthew? Of course, both Governor Walz and Mayor Frey were very vocally critical of ICE's actions in Minneapolis, which saw one person killed and another severely injured when they were shot in the leg. The gap between federal and state governments is severely growing, isn't it, with these investigations now imposed on these Minnesota officials?
The gap between the federal government and some state governments, yes, is definitely growing. Places that are have a lot of sanctuary cities that harbor illegal aliens are not happy that that ICE is now there trying to enforce the law and remove people who don't have a legal right to be in the country. So yeah, it is causing some tension, and there's no question about that. When you ramp up an immigration enforcement operation with a view to deporting potentially millions of illegal aliens, there's going to some people are going to get upset. So that's to be expected. The question is, where is this investigation of Governor Walz and Mayor Frey of Minneapolis going to go? And it's just an investigation. The Department of Justice opens lots of investigations and then doesn't actually lay charges. So um, they both have had have issued a lot of rhetoric encouraging resistance. I'm not sure if that counts as actual, obstruction of ICE operations, but that is what the Department of Justice is going to investigate.
Matthew, some critics are seeing these investigations as threats. Speak out against Trump's actions in your state and have an investigation opened on you. Of course, this follows a wide number of investigations against other federal officials, of course, mainly Democrat officials and former members of his cabinet. And just adversaries in general. Of course, you've got Jacob Frey and Tim Walz, Elissa Sotkin, Chris Christie, Jerome Powell. That was yesterday. You've also got the likes of John Bolton, his former national security advisor. What is Donald Trump's pattern here in opening these investigations in former officials that seemingly are those who disagree with him the most?
Well, they are people who disagree with him a lot, but some of them may have also broken the law. Particularly John Bolton, and that's why he's being probed by the Justice Department. That's why he's being investigated and being prosecuted. Some of these people who are being investigated by the Justice Department have actually apparently done something wrong. Now, you look at the case of Walz, the governor of Minnesota, and he has talked about, I don't know if he's done anything overtly, to obstruct ICE, but he has threatened to use the National Guard to combat, ICE troops, ICE officers, and that's a pretty unusual thing for a governor to do. And the mayor, Frey, of, I guess Jacob, I think is his first name, Frey, of Minneapolis, was a lot more explicit. He was caught on video. He was on video at a press conference a couple of days ago with his chief of police, saying that ICE should be fought, that forces, that police in his jurisdiction should fight ICE in the streets. And I thought, wow, that is really, really specific, and that's not the sort of thing that you have an American mayor normally threatening to do. And I wonder if that crosses the line. But that's something that the Department of Justice will have to pass judgment on. So
Matthew,
they're not just enemies of Trump. They're people who may have actually broken the law, and this is why the Justice Department is investigating.
But Matthew, of course, ICE conducts itself in a way which is pretty unique. Of course, they wear face coverings. They often travel in unmarked vehicles. Also, over the past week, of course, in Minneapolis, which is where these two individuals are based. Of course, we've seen the killing of Renee Good and the injuring of another protester who was shot in the leg. We are seeing some investigation go into the killing of Renee Good, who was an American citizen, of course. However, not the same vocal backing of a investigation when it comes to that. Of course, we've seen the state authorities have their investigation powers lifted from that case in particular. The actions there, of course, some would see as problematic. What are your thoughts?
You mean the federal government isn't investigating the Renee Good
The
shooting?
the state authorities, the FBI are taking control of that now.
Well, yeah, because it's a federal matter. But I think the state can still conduct its own investigation. I think the feds take it over, in the sense that they command the playing field, for lack of a better term, but I don't think they can forbid state officials from doing their own investigation. And I have no doubt that the state officials are investigating, what was his name? Jonathan Ross, the
Hmm.
ICE officer who shot Renee Good. So nobody can stop them from doing that. But, when there's a clash of jurisdictions, federal government, usually wins out. Do they have to share evidence? Do they have to disclose things to each other? I'm not sure exactly how all that works, but you can't stop state and local governments from investigating. If they want to investigate, they will. They have their own prosecutors, their own district attorneys, and
Well,
and what have you.
Minnesota officials have effectively been blocked from participating in the main investigation into the fatal shooting of Renee Good, and federal authorities have restricted their access to evidence and oversight. Of course, this is seeing local and state officials push back due to this action by the national government. Publicly, they have urged the FBI and state investigators and criticized this federal approach for lacking transparency and accountability. Why would the Trump administration completely block the state in which this shooting occurred from investigating it?
Well, they can't block them from investigating. They can deny them access to,
Okay.
the scene of the crime, the scene of the event. They can deny them access to evidence, but they can't forbid them. They can't issue an order saying you can't investigate. They can just make it difficult for them to investigate. There's no, you can't say they can't say you can't do this. They can just make the other side, they can just make the state and local governments' lives more difficult by not cooperating. The federal government, and this is not just a Trump thing, this is long before Trump. When something happens and it's part of federal jurisdiction, federal government often doesn't like sharing its territory, doesn't like sharing its turf with other levels of government. So, I'm sure that the state and the local governments, the government in Minnesota, will be allowed access to the evidence at some point, but not while the DOJ is front and the FBI are front and center looking at this.
The FBI has
So,
taken exclusive control of this investigation, pulling
right,
out the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension and refusing to share evidence or investigative
right.
materials with the state authorities.
Right. They're making it difficult, but they can't, forbid them and say, no, you can't do any investigation. But yeah, they're withholding the important, the vital evidence that they need. But the state
But
and
why?
local governments. Why? Because that's what feds. I don't know for sure. That's what feds normally do. They look when there's a matter involving federal jurisdiction, they tend to monopolize the conversation.
Okay.
And I just that it's been that way as far as as long as I can ever remember. Feds don't like anybody, to use an expression, they don't like anybody muscling in on their turf.
Okay.
Um, I don't think it's unusual for the federal government just under President Trump to be like this. Although, you can see why President Trump would have an interest in the federal government dominating the investigation.
Okay. Matthew Vidums, do stay with us as we have further updates from the United States. And US President Donald Trump has announced that Venezuela will be turning over up to 50 million barrels of oil to the US following a military operation to remove President Nicolas Maduro from power. The oil, valued at $2.8 billion, will be sold at market price, with the proceeds managed by Trump to benefit both the US and the Venezuelan people. Trump's plan includes bringing the US oil industry up and running in Venezuela within 18 months, with expectations of significant investments. The announcement comes amid escalating tensions with China, Venezuela's largest oil customer. China condemned the US move, calling it a violation of Venezuela's sovereignty. Trump further stated that the United States has a great relationship with Delcy Rodriguez, who became Venezuela's interim president after US forces captured Nicolas Maduro in Caracas. Let's listen in.
We've had a great relationship with the people that are currently they say the interim president and everybody else, and it's been I think a lot of pressure has been released because that was a great country 20 years ago, and then it went bad because it had the wrong system. Now I like Venezuela very much. I say good things. I don't talk about Venezuela in a negative. I think it's a wonderful country. We just were. It's very interesting. It's so much different. It's changed so much in literally a week.
Delcy Rodriguez announced a government reshuffle, merging the Ministry of Industries and National Production with the Ministry of National Commerce into a single new entity. Luis Antonio Villegas, previously Minister of National Commerce, will lead the merged ministry, replacing businessman Alex Saab, a close ally of former President Nicolas Maduro. Rodriguez thanked Saab for his service and said he will take on new responsibilities. Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado, who left Trump in Washington and presented him with her Nobel Peace Prize medal, said Venezuela will be free with support from the US and Trump's leadership. Let's take a listen in.
Pero la señora Delcy Rodríguez en este momento lo que está es cumpliendo órdenes. Ella no está en un acuerdo, a motus propio, ni cómoda. Ella está cumpliendo órdenes, porque al final...
I want to assure the Venezuelan people is that Venezuela is going to be free, and that's going to be achieved with the support of the people of the United States and the President, Donald Trump of the United States.
Matthew Vedum joins us once again. Of course, Matthew, post Nicolas Maduro capture, this hasn't really turned out as expected. Of course, his government still is in power in Caracas with Delcy Rodriguez now at the helm of the country. She seems to be cooperating with US authorities. How do you see this moving forward?
Well, she's cooperating because she's terrified because there's a massive American armada parked off her shores. So yeah, she's cooperating. Whether ultimately this is a relationship, between her and the U.S. government, whether it's sustainable is another question. It depends. If Trump's main interest is in freeing the Venezuelan people from socialist tyranny, then I'd say it's not, the relationship is going to go sour soon if his relationship and the people of Venezuela may be freed. If the only thing he's interested in is the oil, then he can probably, as long as the oil is flowing, he can probably work with the acting president of Venezuela and and make a deal with her. And I'm a little concerned. I'm not really sure what his motives are here. Is it about the oil, or is it about freeing the people of Venezuela? It's kind of hard to tell. I'd like to think he wants to free the people of Venezuela, but after removing Maduro, he hasn't really done that much. Towards dismantling the government in Venezuela. In fact, he said nice things, as you just played in your clip, about the Venezuelan authorities. So I hope this is not the beginning of a partnership with the tyrants running Venezuela, just so that America can get cheap oil from Venezuela.
Matthew,
I hope. I don't know for sure.
Yeah. Matthew Vedum, thank you very much for joining us. Pleasure to have you as always. We now move on and over to a related development, and the Venezuelan Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino Lopez reported that 83 people were killed in the US military operation on January the 3rd, including 47 Venezuelan service members and 32 Cuban soldiers. The operation targeted both military and civilian sites, leading to significant casualties, with 112 others wounded. The US confirmed its strikes aimed at removing President Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, from the country. Venezuelan officials have condemned the attack as military aggression, declaring a state of emergency. Cuba has mourned the loss of its soldiers who were in Venezuela in support of the government. The US intervention, framed by Washington as necessary to combat alleged criminal activities, has sparked global controversy due to its human rights high human toll. Now we turn to Europe, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has confirmed that a Ukrainian delegation is heading to the United States for talks on security guarantees and a post-war recovery plan. Zelensky has expressed hopes that key agreements could be signed during next week's World Economic Forum in Davos. Let's listen in to what he had to say in a recent video message.
Сьогодні я провів нараду з урядовцями та командою Офісу. Зараз на шляху в Сполучені Штати Америки наші представники Рустем Умєров, Кирило Буданов, Давид Арахамія. Зустрічі з американськими колегами ми очікуємо найближчим часом.
Moreover, US President Donald Trump has recently mentioned the possibility of meeting with Zelensky in Davos, a meeting that the Ukrainian president has long pursued. Additionally, Zelensky has warned that Russia may be preparing for a new wave of massive strikes. He has also emphasized that the supply of air defense systems and missiles from Ukraine's allies was still insufficient. Let's listen in to his comments.
Окремі завдання сьогодні для ППО, для військових. Зараз від розвідки ми маємо інформацію, що росіяни готуються до нових масованих ударів. Ми чесно говоримо з партнерами щодо ракет для ППО, щодо систем, які так необхідні нам. Постачання недостатньо. Стараємось прискорювати. Важливо, щоб партнери нас чули. Багато робиться зараз на рівні Міністерства оборони України, але все одно, будь ласка.
Joining us now is Major General A.K. Sawatch. He is a geostrategic expert joining us live from New Delhi. Of course, we're going to see most likely some major diplomacy as Davos comes up in the coming days, with a possible Zelensky-Trump meet on the cards. Of course, this comes after an interview where once again Donald Trump blamed Zelensky for not being in pursuit of peace, saying he is prolonging the war. Of course, Zelensky wants those security guarantees post-peace settlement as well. How do you see Davos unfolding?
No doubt. As far as the security guarantee is concerned, it's very important for Ukraine. You know, the red line is already drawn as far as joining NATO is concerned. The Russia will not accept that, and therefore joining NATO is out of question. Now, if Ukraine does not join NATO, it has to have some security guarantee. And they are saying it should be very much akin to Article 5 of NATO, wherein, you know, the attack on one NATO country, the attack on all countries, or something of that sort, where Ukraine feels comfortable that in future, in case the Russia again attack Ukraine, there will be a country which will be Russia, Europe, as well as NATO country. I suppose that's a very, very important, you know, phase, because Ukraine and Zelensky especially does not want anything, you know, move ahead until unless this security guarantee is sorted out. And the second sticking point which is there is the reconstruction activity which will take place in case the peace deal is signed between Russia and Ukraine and brokered by US. Now the situation is quite in flux, there is no doubt. At one time we are trying to convey that possibly there is a chance of peace prevailing, there may be some agreement, or Zelensky and Donald Trump will meet in Davos, but ground situation is deteriorating day by day. The war has been now almost about 4 years. It started in February 2022. Now the situation is so bad, the winters are already on, and Russia is attacking the energy sector of Ukraine. The air defense system of Ukraine is not sufficient, which Zelensky has already pointed out. It says that it wants more weapons, and the air defense system which was given by the European countries also to some extent not effective because it lacks ammunition, and it is also a shortage. And Russia of its own is trying to do what? It is trying to now break the morale of people of Ukraine by hitting their supply chain, command structure, energy sector, which is very crucial, temperature minus 20 degree, and also it is now trying to take more area of Donbas, Zaporizhia, and Kherson. You have seen in Donetsk and Luhansk still moving toward the west, and also it is now going to the port city like Odisha. So overall, Russia is progressing in the western sector. Second, it is hitting the energy sector of Ukraine, which is the vulnerability of Ukraine. And since Ukraine lacks the air defense system, it is not able to defend it. But all in all, one thing is very clear. Zelensky is not only asking for more air defense system. In this Miami talk, it wants to clear that what sort of security guarantee will be given to Ukraine in case Ukraine agree for a ceasefire, and also the reconstruction activity. So overall, a lot of talks have gone on. This is also one of the talk, but the expectations are huge in Miami and thereafter in Davos, where you will find Zelensky and Donald Trump will be again meeting and some sort of negotiation. Remember that one must also understand, Ukraine is also hitting back Russia. It is not now that it is only Russia hitting. Because Ukraine has drones now, it has got its own drone industry doing well. It has gone deep inside up to 300 to 400 kilometers inside Russia. It has also hit their energy sector, and also supply chain of Russia is affected.
Yes.
But Russia is still more powerful. Russia industrial military complex is working 24/7, and hence the economic sanctions which were imposed by the America and the other European countries are not having that much impact on ground.
Major General AK Sawatch, do stay with us as we move on to our next story, and we turn to the Middle East. And a new Palestinian committee tasked with governing Gaza under US supervision held its first meeting in Cairo on January the 16th. Ali Shattath, a former Palestinian Authority official, will lead the committee. He aims to address immediate needs, starting with shelter, and expects full recovery and reconstruction to take about 3 years. In an interview, Shattath emphasized the importance of this committee for the Palestinian people, who have been eagerly awaiting this step. US President Donald Trump has voiced his support for the committee, which will oversee Gaza's day-to-day affairs following the war between Israel and Hamas. Trump's support comes as he unveiled the founding members of the Gaza Board of Peace, a body tasked with overseeing Gaza's transition in the wake of the ongoing conflict. Among the 7 individuals named to the board are US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, Trump's Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, son-in-law Jared Kushner, and World Bank President Ajay Banga. Trump himself will chair the board, which is set to grow to 15 members. Major General Sawatch joins us once again. Of course, a huge development coming out of the enclave. Now we know 7 individuals out of the 15 who are going to be heading this so-called Board of Peace, as well as the Palestinian Technocratic Committee, which is having its first meeting today to discuss those pressing issues in the enclave. However, despite this, of course, we are on the second phase, supposedly. Violence continues. The humanitarian situation continues to be dire. There still remains 1 hostage in the rubble inside the Gaza Strip, yet to be located, as well as Israeli airstrikes still prominent and Hamas not disarmed. If you're looking at this in the long term, unfortunately we don't have time. How would you look at the order in which this US-backed Peace in the Middle East plan has gone forward so far?
You know, it's a very, very complex situation. What happened is that the peace deal which has been basically signed between Israel and also Hamas also the US was brokered it. Now it has got a number of phases. Phase 1 was the ceasefire which had taken place. Phase 2 is the disarmament of Hamas. Now that is the biggest sticking point. The Hamas is not ready to be disarmed, and the area has to be demilitarized. Now this is the biggest sticking point, and how do we sort it out? You will move ahead then only. Otherwise, there is a Palestine committee which is meeting now. There is a board of peace wherein a technocrat committee also as to who will be ruling sort of Palestine in that's a Gaza. That all is well, but the main sticking point which is coming is until unless Hamas is not disarmed, then nothing can move ahead. But all in all, one thing is very clear, that US is interest is that this peace committee which is there, the Palestine committee, they must make a roadmap of construction activity which will take place. Remember, as far as Gaza is concerned, almost 90% is destroyed completely. It has become a rubble now, and therefore the construction activity will take place almost 3 to 4 years for it in a livable condition. So the point is that when this is going on, where the population of Gaza will stay there, will they remain in the tents, that also has to be taken, and the board of peace will consider the day-to-day administration, as well as also see that whatever has been planned as per the peace plan goes according to the book. And in this, Donald Trump is there, Marco Rubio is there, and Tony Blair is there, who used to be Prime Minister earlier of the UK. So one thing is very clear, that everyone wants peace in the Middle East, and everyone wants this war which has stopped now, ceasefire. They should continue as a ceasefire, and it should not abrupt again. But the sticking point is the Hamas is not still ready to be disarmed, and the international stabilizing force, not too many countries are ready to come and contribute, because everyone is afraid, especially the Muslim countries which initially showed interest to come and become a part of international stabilizing force, are taking a step backward, because they feel that it will not be a peacekeeping, it may be peace enforcing, because Hamas will not be that easy to disarm. So overall the situation is quite fluid, and it is complex, but certainly US is trying its best to stabilize it, and also Israel is not very keen to prolong it, because Israel has got its own problem. Israel has been fighting this war and feeling it that it has hurt its own economy, its own people. As far as Netanyahu is concerned, his popularity is going down. So considering all this thing, Israel is interested that some sort of negotiation which was done there, the peace was there, it should go as per the roadmap. But let's see how things happen. As far as the Hezbollah is concerned, Israel is very clear that they will not allow Hezbollah to also come up, and therefore they are taking action against Hezbollah in Lebanon, and the Lebanon government is supporting them. That is a very good thing as to how things are materialized. But overall, to me, it looks like the situation, though stable, but it is still very complex. US is trying its best, the peace must prevail, and the construction activity should start, and the road map should be made as to how things will unfold for reconstruction, and also making sure the peace prevail in Gaza Patti.
Okay, Major General Sawatch, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. But unfortunately, we have ran out of time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates. Thank you.